It's not difficult to notice that in recent years, indie games are increasingly beginning to overtake AAA projects in popularity and, most importantly, in quality. After all, players feel the soul in indie games, which the developers were able to put into them, not burdened by deadlines, investors, budgets, or marketers. But logically, it should be the other way around. Well, AAA games receive a large budget, a large number of professionals working on a particular game, and a huge advertising company. It would seem that they must certainly make the game high quality and popular, right? On the other hand, indie developers without a large amount of resources for game development, an incredibly small budget compared to AAA games, and a small team of developers, sometimes consisting of just one person, manage to create games that are many times higher quality and more interesting than their AAA competitors. And how do they manage to do that? In this video, I'll look at the techniques and tricks that indie game developers use to streamline the development process, making it easier without sacrificing the end result and quality of the game. Optimization of development using graphics. Many indie games opt for simple, easy-to-produce graphics to save money. This works extremely effectively because it allows not entirely experienced and professional indie game developers to create quite nice graphics that do not require a huge skill set. In 2D projects, a striking example of such savings in game development using graphics are pixel art games. And in 3D, games in the style of PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64, or other retro 3D console. Pixel art games such as Downwell use only 3 colors in addition to simple pixel graphics. Since the game was developed by only one person, Ojiro Fomoto, and he did not have much experience in drawing or animation, his choice fell on a similar retro style, because it requires much less time and effort to recreate, and to learn how to do something in this style of good quality is much easier than in many other styles. It is worth noting that despite the very simple style, the game doesn't look bad at all. It only borrows the technique of creating graphics from retro games, but not their clumsiness, awkwardness, and strange design solutions. All aspects of Downwell's gameplay are excellent. It's a pleasure to play the game, the visuals look lush, the character controls are responsive, and the gameplay loop itself works great. In case of Downwell, we cannot say that the pixel art style makes the game ugly, makes it something worse than a AAA game like God of War, for example. After all, the beauty of graphics is not determined by realism or ray tracing, and anyone who thinks otherwise is just simply an idiot. Ojiro Fomoto took the style in which he knew he could work and made the most of it. By the way, even the Downwell's genre, roguelike, itself is aimed at saving resources, because for Ojiro Fomoto it was easier to create a random generation of levels than to work through a huge amount of levels one by one. Thanks to this decision, the game itself has become much more replayable, because now each playthrough is a unique experience, which allows you to play Downwell for hours on end. It is these exact solutions which solve several problems at the same time, without worsening and sometimes even improving the game, that allow indie game developers to create a truly high-quality product, despite their limited capabilities. So, as I've said before, in 3D indie games, developers often also resort to retro or simplified style. A good example is games such as Ultra Kill, Dusk, and Minecraft. Yes, Minecraft is one of the most clear examples of an indie developer doing something incredibly successful. But at the same time, Minecraft graphics cannot be called a phenomenon or something particularly beautiful, even from the point of view of indie games. So, what is the phenomenon of Minecraft? Well, many factors played a role in the success of this indie game, such as the simplicity and lack of games in a similar genre on the market at that time. But one cannot take away from the fact that it featured a previously unseen gameplay loop and complete freedom of action. Essentially, the player was placed in a world and told to do whatever you want. It was this freedom of action that led to the success of the game. There are many ways to play Minecraft. Some people like to survive, some like to build, and some like to travel around a randomly generated world, studying its vastness, biomes, and inhabitants. I think it was the gameplay and variability of Minecraft that made it so successful. And from that we can conclude that sometimes, and I would even say almost always, how interesting and well made a game is, from the game design point of view, determines its success. Of course, the Minecraft developer also chose a simple style to make it easier to implement his rather ambitious and large idea. Using the example of Minecraft, we can see that highly detailed and labor-intensive graphics are not at all necessary for a game to be a masterpiece. But how important are graphics really? And how much can you actually save on creating them? And this is the question asked by the developer of the game called Thomas Was Alone, Michael Bithell. His game consists of only squares of different colors and sizes, occasionally other figures, and easy to create effects, such as shadows or imitation of water. But there are not too many effects in the game, and all the tension and the entire plot is conveyed to the player only by text, music, and atmosphere. Michael Bithell pushes the limits to see if a game with such little graphics will be successful and interesting for people. Also, a lot is conveyed to the player through cleverly designed puzzles and, in general, well-designed gameplay. Puzzles that carry a certain meaning, a message. After all, they symbolize the difficult life situations that people face. The game shows that such difficulties can be overcome with other people, helping each other. So, to sum up, the strengths of Thomas Was Alone include the gameplay component of the game, well-designed levels, as well as many interesting mechanics, such as, for example, taking control of several characters. But oddly enough, the most striking and catchy aspects of the game are its plot and atmosphere. Michael Bithell managed to make a wonderful, emotional game that consists only of squares and text, but at the same time raises very important questions of social interaction between people, loneliness, fears, and how to overcome them. The game forces the player to use his imagination, build an association with the characters in the game, and sympathize with them. We can truly say that Thomas Was Alone is a successful indie game, in which saving money on graphics not only helped the developer realize his idea, but also made the game special, unusual, in some sense memorable for its simplicity. Because I think we can agree that if the game had too much sophisticated and detailed graphics, the meanings that the author wanted to convey would be lost. Okay, we figured out choosing simple graphics greatly speeds up the development process, and the game can still turn out beautiful, memorable, and interesting. But what are some of the smaller tricks that indie developers use when making games? Let's take a look at such tricks using Hollow Knight as an example. As far as you can tell, Hollow Knight is a Metroidvania, and a pretty big one actually. It contains many locations and a very large, rich and detailed world. But if the developers hadn't used a lot of clever tricks to speed up the development process, they would never have finished this project at all. For example, the artist and level designer of Hollow Knight specifically creates as many assets as possible that can be consistently repeated and used in many places. He draws them in such a way that from a small number of elements, combining them in different ways, he can create a beautiful and unique location. We see example of a successful underhand technique here, where by repeating the same asset that I drew, we cannot clearly notice that something here is repeated, catches our eye, or looks cheap. Here's a bad example of using duplicate assets. Understanding this, we can confidently say that the artist of Hollow Knight, Ari Gibson, did an excellent job. Moreover, in each location there's a certain number of special assets that are not used anywhere else, and it is to them that the player's attention is drawn. In this way, an illusion is created, and each location seems very special and unique. The player doesn't even notice that many of the assets, such as bushes and walls, practically do not change. So just like that, we discussed some of the tricks that indie game developers use to optimize the development process of their games. Of course, these are not all the solutions that indie game developers use, but these are the main ones I wanted to talk about in this video. So thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.